We're not going to make you wait. We're not even going to take a break. We're going to go straight into round 6. Let's put the leaderboard up so you can see how things are standing, and then we're going to start playing again. So Steven Dykman is the only player that is 5-0. Congratulations to him. Looking very strong. Couple players at 4-1, and nobody is 0-5. So everyone got on the board at some point or other as Ben Unger finally picks up a win. All right, you can see that. Let's go ahead and go down to the table. Looks like the round is ready to go. We obviously didn't take a break, so Drake and I don't know what's coming up, but it's Daniel Weiser and Raja Sulaiman.
Oh, I think we should strap in for this one. I believe this is Azorius Control versus 4-color Omnath, which if I had to gamble on it, we're in for a long haul here, Joe.
Well,
I don't know.
We said we were in for a short one last time, and that sure didn't happen. So
sure. Maybe this one will go fast. I don't know how fast that whatever, like a naked solitude or whatever can kill, but maybe that's what we're in for. Both players starting on Rogren Triumph, though, doesn't really give me the aggro vibes for a quick match here between these two players.
No, absolutely not. All right, so we are underway in round 6. This round and one more of Modern to finish up stage 1. After that, 4 players will be out of the tournament. 4 players will advance into Sunday morning stage 3, and the other 8 will play a double elimination bracket where if you haven't seen the structure video, and obviously we didn't have time to play it between rounds as there was no break between rounds, the evening play will be double elimination. Players will sit down to face and then veto a format and then play the remaining format. So there will be, we can't tell you what format you'll be watching this evening because we don't know until the players sit down. Anyway, Ren 6 into play for Daniel Weiser. And that's a good place to start. Ren is 6.
I mean, Ren has got to be one of the best cards in the matchup if I had to gamble on, especially at the 2-mana slot.
Yeah.
Ren, especially with the fetch land. I mean, everything kind of already coming up Daniel Weiser. And of course, as the 4-color deck, you do also just want your mana to function. You're liable to be on a long haul here, looking to have, some kind of counterspell fights. Both of these decks loaded up counter magic, 4 counterspell. If we're talking about Daniel Weiser's deck, he's got 4 counterspell, a force negation, a spell pierce, 2 stern scoldings, and then of course like some other stuff that could play like subtlety and stuff like that. But not as much as Raja, who it's labeled Azorius. There is actually 2 copies of Omnath in this deck. So labeling it Azorius may be a little disingenuous. We got some green sideboard cards. Of course, there's a Kahira in the companion zone. We're stretching what Azorius actually means. But of course, we're doing this.
What Azorius are you talking about? I'm reading 4-color Omnath versus 4-color Control. Try and keep up, Drake.
Oh, well, he labeled it Azorius Control when he submitted it. So that's what he calls it. And that's what I'm going to call it, Joe, because I follow the player's deck.
You're right. Going with the player's chosen archetype names never leads to disaster.
They've always been honest, okay? Counterspell going to meet into Fairy Time Rattler, which would, of course, reduce the sub-game of counterspells to 0. So that one does need to be answered. And just a land pass back to Daniel Weiser. But Raja can't be super thrilled. You can see a little bit of a kind of look on his face. This Ren is going to work. Daniel Weiser, stone cold, just playing lands, picking them up. A good plan, tried and true. People called for a ban on Ren and 6 at one point.
I mean, it's a pretty aggravating card, and another aggravating card. Second try at Teferi Time Raveler and
second counterspell. All right.
We're
just going to line these cards up, and then Misty Rainforest gets picked up in the process. We're going to go ahead and fetch. Love the little shortcuts. We gotta get this match moving because it could take a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Sagoth Triumph to find.
Round timers extended throughout the championship. Day 1, 55 minutes instead of 50. So a little more leeway for the players, but still, a matchup like this, they both know that we're going to retitle Raj's deck again. It's now blue, white, capital, red, green, lowercase control, which I do like the style there.
I'm sorry, it looks so good next to 4-color, which have blue, white,
this has got to be like the accepted standard for blue, white control for actually Ren and 6, right? That's how you would write it. What else would you do? Yeah. And of course,
there's no Ren and 6s in Raja's deck. It's like just a couple copies of Omnath. I mean, Raja, that's worked from last time. 2022 champion. He won with some Broker's Charms or whatever in his control deck. He shows up with whatever's in his control binder and just beats everybody. So we'll see if he can do that again here and with his UWrg control deck.
You're overcomplicating things on purpose to make it look silly. It's blue, white. It's just a little
Yeah, so
splash.
easy.
It's just a little splash. Ren and 6 or Omnath, whatever. One ring, that takes colorless. It's on the board.
Yeah, pretty color intensive. That
And
one's going to
that,
resolve. That's going to be a big deal. That's going to be the start of catching
Yeah.
back up. But now shields are down. If there's something like a Teferi number 3 involved for Daniel, that
Well,
could be
okay,
pretty
sure, but
problematic.
that's asking a lot for Daniel's deck here, putting a third Teferi out.
Isn't he's drawing a million cards?
Well, he was drawing a million lands. I don't know if he's drawing a million cards. But yeah, the Ren 6 here, Raja has to be thrilled to have that on the board to start making amends here. And now he's going to need removal for Ren 6, as you don't want that one to ultimate. That
that would put it into the game pretty prematurely, I'd say. Yeah, I don't know if we watched earlier. There was a control mirror with Matt Hoey that you mentioned the extended round time. Mm-hmm. Of course, Raja doing Raja things, playing control in every format. They went to time in game 1, had the sudden death roll come up in game 1 earlier today. So Raja's been playing heavy magic all day, just doesn't stop. As Ren does tick up to 7, finds another land back over to Raja we go after Prismatic Ending takes care of the One Ring, does replace itself, but this Ren is such a problem. Prismatic Ending is going to take it off the board, though, and now board's clear.
Okay.
It's already done.
All right, Raja's still in it. Yeah, if you're curious about the deck lists for Modern or the other formats played this morning, they are now all available. And if production can maybe put a link to that in the chat, if the bot isn't already doing it, they are all available now. Modern, Pioneer, and Standard, what we're playing this weekend.
Yeah. Of course, Raja, as I mentioned before, plays control in basically every format. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to see a lot of variety if you're looking at his decks.
And that's very taxing. You're signing up for a lot when you do that. That is long rounds and a lot of mental effort required to I'm not going to be one that's going to say that control decks are harder to play than other decks, but you're going to play for longer. And over the course of the day, that's just going to add up. So Omnath on the stack here for Daniel Weiser.
Yeah, I mean, Omnath, a big part of the equation here if you're trying to get ahead and reprieve the new take on Remand, but of course not a counter spell. Going to go after it. Gets Spell Pierce instead. Card coming thanks to the ETB of Omnath. And there's a fetch land. All right. Immediately cracking that. We got more to do. So going to be 4 mana coming. Of course, 4 life already coming for Daniel. Going to make it hard to just chip shot your way in. This game's going to have to be won, I imagine, by overwhelming advantage. Oh, yeah, all four of the basics. Thank you, production. Got 4 mana to work with, 4 beautiful basics. And we'll see exactly what Daniel's going to choose to do. Looks like red and green right away, going to go away. Red and 6, number 2 coming down. And already to start ticking back up. Well, that's not that scary yet.
All right. Yeah. I mean, at this point, Daniel's probably likely to hit all his land drops. And this Ren 6, like you're saying, it takes a while to build up. But
if you talk about traditional control magic mirrors, a lot of times it is about the mana, even though you're quote unquote wasting mana every turn by just passing the turn. A lot of times it is about getting ahead in mana. That way you can power through stuff. Yeah. And not just Ren and 6, but Omnath, also 2 really good cards at accomplishing exactly that. And with Daniel having access to both of those, hard not to put him as a clear favorite to win this game from where things stand, even though it doesn't look like he's that ahead. You know, a couple extra lands, a Planeswalker is obviously big, but doesn't actually get the game over with that quick. Kahira, whatever, but I mean, Daniel's very far ahead, I would argue.
Right. No, I would agree. He's very far ahead in resources. There's 3 more land on the board, and those 3 land on the board didn't cost him anything. Mm-hmm. So,
well, a few life points, but we got those back from Omnath, right? Yeah. Even with Omnath answer to Supreme Verdict, whatever. Like a lot of the damage is quote unquote done already. Is Hall the Storm Giants added to the mix for Raja? Still tapped out again, shields down every single turn. Daniel basically allowed to do whatever he wants with whatever's left over, but probably a lot of lands. If I had to guess, the triumphs can be cycled if that's something we have access to, but otherwise we're just gonna be maybe starting to beat down with Kahira, start getting the job done.
Yeah, Kahira. I mean, why not, right? It's pretty free.
Beat down, yeah. Yeah, 3/2 vigilance gives the other elementals, +1/+1 vigilance. It's come up. I've seen that come up.
Yeah, no, I would argue it comes up a lot more often than Giganta does.
Sure. Tapping Giganta for mana doesn't probably come up that much. Just attack with your 5/5 vanilla. As here's Leyline Binding, the first of the match. Of course, the reason that Raja is all these extra colors, go ahead and support Leyline Binding. That's going to go after the Renin 6. That's going to work. And I think Besiju may be the only checks for that. 2 copies in the sideboard, 1 in the main deck. Of course, you get Leyline Binding, but, you know, that's we start getting the O-ring territory. 3 mana tapped for Raja. Going to Teferi minus, return Kahira, and 2 mana left over for Raja. Not a lot of mana to work with, but Teferi shuts down a lot of the counter spells if that's like an axis that we care about.
It does. No land drop again for Raja, though. Yeah, you're right. It's starting to become a problem, but if there's counterspell in hand, okay. So if Daniel only has, Daniel's hasn't had much to remove yet, so wouldn't be surprising if there are maybe 2 things in hand. There's
a Ren. Are we counterspelling this? There hasn't been a lot else going on, and of course it depends on the texture of Raja's hand whether or not we're looking to answer that. But exactly where he lands.
All right, so Binding on Binding frees up the Ren, which down takes and picks off Teferi.
Yeah, this is exactly where we're at. Now we're at Binding on Binding, and then if a third bind, I don't know what happens if the third binding happens. At some point, I think if those are the only permanents, O-rings can draw, but there's going to be, it looks like, plenty of other stuff to target. As Kahira comes back down, threatens to do some more damage. Again, a lot of this is just kind of jockeying for position, but Daniel's still ahead just thanks to the density of mana. Doesn't need a lot to actually present a threat every turn and can just work through all of the stuff Raja has typically. And we see that's still the case here as Daniel's passed the turn back again with the Planeswalker and Kahira in play. Raja's only 5 mana, some cards in hand, but deploying them all can be really tough. Yeah,
deploying even any of them might be tough here.
I'm not sure if that's, we see a little bit of a look on Raja's face of uncertainty. Daniel's been fighting over these Renin 6s tooth and nail all game.
We
quick land check looks like. It looks like there's some conversation with a judge. Can't get a great read what it's about. Raja, hand on face for Raja. I don't know what we're thinking about, but yeah, trying to gauge off expression alone what we're looking at. Or is it a life total correction on fetch lands? That's got to be hard to try to retrace.
There's always a possibility of Binding having been played for the wrong amount of mana, but
sure. Counting the land types wrong. I think we have all 5, right? I see it's Sultai Triome, Jeskai Triome, and that should cover it on the 2 triumphs alone. It could just be like, did you play an extra land or whatever?
No, it looks like maybe it's the wrong mana was used to to cover all the spells that were cast. Maybe all the right mana wasn't tapped. It does seem like the hiccup may have been on Daniel's side while this is being sorted out.
I'll tell you this, Raja, even though he's behind this game, very ahead at 4-1 in this tournament so far. Big match for him here if he's looking to advance all the way to stage 3, skipping stage 2. Daniel kind of on the edge. A couple wins can put him in a really good spot. A couple losses can put him in a really bad spot. So, quite a tournament more or less on the line for Daniel, whereas Raja's accelerations on the line. We can take a look at Raja, our 2022 NRG Series champion. Take a look at his ranking coming in. It's got to be pretty high on pure ranking and all that other stuff. And he sure is. 2nd place, 3rd overall. I don't know. How do you not favor the returning champion, Joe?
Yeah, we are favoring him. 3rd is pretty good.
Number 1, Joe. Number 1. Chalice on 0. Or 1, maybe? Chalice on 1 coming down. Didn't see the dice reach for quite yet. And Raja's Kahira is coming down. So now we got Kahira's facing off. Ren still in play for Daniel. And Chalice of the Void. Let's take a quick look at what that shuts off. The players know each other's deck list, but I need to know.
It's not much.
That can't be much, but I mean, I can't imagine there's a lot of targets to start with. So yeah, it shuts off the 1 Spell Pierce, the 2 Stern Scoldings, and
that looks like it.
That looks like the end of the list.
Yeah,
so I guess, but I mean, Raja may have just straight 0/1 drops, and that. Okay, we have 2 Preordains in Raja's deck, so maybe that's just worth it. It's just shutting off some of the counter spells. Yeah, Judge Call is for fetching the wrong land. Just got an update about that, so I'm sure that was handled. That's usually a pretty easy fix. Happens a ton. One of the additional downsides to Magic's leniency on allowing fetch lands in various formats is sometimes you fetch the wrong land because, especially in 4-color decks like this.
Mm-hmm. All right, so to re-summarize the game state, we have Kahiras opposing each other and a Wrenn and 6 facing a challenge on 1 that is, to say not impactful would be maybe an understatement.
Unlikely to be relevant, as the wondering is very likely to be relevant, as it immediately comes down. Trigger for protection from everything card coming. Roger's going to need an answer to that one right away. We've seen both players do a pretty good job of checking the most problematic permanents, which do come at that 4-mana slot. Omnaths and One Rings are the cards, of course, I'm talking about. Both players been able to answer those right away. Here's another one that if Roger doesn't have the answer to, could just threaten to run away with the game in an overwhelming display of card advantage, and why the One Ring,
I don't know if Daniel just got a warning for misfetching. Do you think it's an error for him to play another fetch line? Maybe you should just cool it on those the rest of the game.
You just leave and play. Don't crack them. Just put them off to the side. If you need it, you need it. If not, whatever. They can just sit over there. I have them. We've got plenty of mana to work with as it is. It's back to Roger we go. Again, the One Ring, very much what Roger's turn's got to be about, or things are going to start to slip away really, really quickly. There is Leyline Binding. That one costs 2/1. Yeah, we have the same setup. We have a Sultai Triumph and a Jeskai Triumph, so that one's going to go after Kahira?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get the Wrenn 6 out of here. I mean, that does leave the Wrenn 6. I mean, I'm sorry, the One Ring on the board, which is, also a significant problem.
I mean, if your plan is to beat down with this Kahira and that's the way you're going to win, then, the One Ring does play on your team in that regard. But, the card advantage Daniel's going to get off of this One Ring, that has to be something that Roger has to consider, and I'm sure he has. And here we are. We're beaten down with Kahira. Wren's off the board. One Ring tapped. 2 cards coming for Daniel. Can't get a great look at those. This game might be propelling to Namo.
Oh, wow.
Namo too. Those
sure.
Kind of expensive.
Get some more cards. Yeah.
Untap the One Ring. Tap it again. More cards. Talk to me. 3 more. So 5 cards drawn off One Ring alone this turn.
That's pretty strong. All right.
In a control mirror, you like just.
I don't even think it matters what kind of mirror you're playing. It's okay. Sure, replace it. No, I'm not taking any damage.
Yeah, no. Why would you do that?
No.
I don't need that.
Invincibility
Roger
for the turn.
Nods.
Oh boy, Roger Sulaiman with fewer cards in hand than Daniel has drawn multiple times this turn.
Yeah, I think we're approaching fewer permanents in play than Daniel has drawn cards this turn.
Yeah, so we talked about clock, and this is game 1, and even though 5 minutes extended, and Roger's already been to time today, are your chances of winning high enough to justify continuing to play this game at this point if you're Raja?
There's a lot to consider, right? Like, are you favorites matchup? Do you have, whatever the takes to get out of this? Is the game even going to go that much longer? Like, is there a chance that he's going to make some mistakes or whatever? Mm-hmm. Prismatic Ending, of course, coming down on Kahira could start to get the work done. Like, One Ring is postured in such a way that it is easy to screw up if you can't close the game. And if Raja thinks he can just answer all the threats and let the One Ring do the job for him, if Daniel starts getting frisky with that, maybe we're not at 0% yet. But it looks like Raja took a draw, and we're going to go ahead and move along with things. So exactly what you called out. Let's just see how the rest of that turn plays out. See what your draw step is. Doesn't hurt that much on the clock, and to sideboarding we go. So I hate to say it, a fast game 1.
Oh boy!
But I would argue that is among the fastest that we could possibly see that game 1 play out. Both players playing at a great pace and a lot of back and forth. But Daniel got ahead early with that Wrenn and kind of rode that to victory.
All right. Well, let's look at the deck list here. Look at the sideboards and see if there's anything that can break the pace of the game, which there probably isn't. As we're going to see a whole host of additional defensive cards to out-control the other control deck. Raja Sulaiman's got Veil of Summers, he's got Dovin's Vetoes, Force of Negations. None of those cards do damage. Those cards win the
That's
game.
not what we're here for. We're not here to do
No,
damage.
there really isn't. And he can clean up his deck a little bit, probably get those Chalice of the Voids out of there, or adjust his
removal's probably bad.
Yeah.
We have verdicts. We can probably cut some of those. And we even have like Aether Gust and stuff like that. The 4-color, a lot better against like red and 6 in the 4-color deck than any kind of true mirror. So yeah, a ton of stack-based interaction to bring in. Can cut, some of the weaker cards. Chalice, like I said, we saw look pretty bad. And then of course, likely some of the other the removal spells and maybe some of the I hate to say it, cards that get the game over with quicker.
Right. I know. All right, let's go to Daniel's list. See if there is a I win card to come in out of the sideboard. Amongst Flusterstorm, Prismatic Ending, Veil of Summers, Dovin's Veto, Hallowed Malay, Force of Negation, Wear Tear, Supreme Verdict, Chalice of Voids, Dress Down, and some more Poseidon. So, Drake Sasser, neither one of these players, and maybe it's just not present in Modern, thought to themselves, if there's a control mirror, I need a way to break through if I draw it. That could be like an Eldrazi, something that has a cast trigger. We just don't see that, and thus this is going to be a slog, right? There's just no.
Yeah, we used to see the Promised End as like that card of choice. We saw the decks of old used to be able to do that. We saw that kind of get moved away from, and we see that kind of reminiscent here as well. Like we just moved towards Veil of Summers, and usually use cards like the now banned Fury and stuff like that in order to end the games quickly. We don't have those anymore, so now maybe that's a little bit too. Kind of including more Omnath and stuff like that. These are cards that can do a lot of damage thanks to the triggers with multiple fetch lands and stuff. You can get the game over with pretty quickly. But overall, the actual like mirror breakers that we're looking at in both decks, having access to green, is Veil of Summer. That's like one of the best ones. Dovin's Veto, of course, in the mix. Just be able to power through whatever, your one ring, whatever it is, try to power through and just accumulate an overwhelming advantage. And that's going to be good enough a lot of the games.
It's tough, though. It's tough because Veil of Summer, it's great, but it's terrible against the Fairy Time Raveler. And, your opponent has counter magic also, and it can just be, it can just be hard to gain an advantage here. And so I feel like in a lot of events, in a random event that you're playing in, if you're Raja Sulaiman, if you're Daniel Weiser, you can say to yourself, I'm going to make better decisions than my opponent and win based on that. I don't think you can rely on that in an event like this against an opponent like this. Let's bring up Daniel Weiser's power ranking card if we have it. And you can see here, Daniel Weiser comes in fifth. Not as much experience on the NRG series as some of the other players, but number one ELO project rating. Daniel Weiser is actually 13th in the world in ELO project rating.
That's incredibly impressive.
Largely on behalf of having just won the regional championship in Atlanta.
Yeah, that'll do it.
and also came in first in peer ranking. And not only did he come in first in the aggregate, he came in first on 5 of the 6 ballots.
Wow.
So Daniel Weiser, an opponent that the players on the series are fine to be fearful. Not someone they want to face. Comes in 5th overall, but neither one of these players are slouched. Both know what they're doing, and if you can't rely on your opponent making errors, these matches can be tough to win.
Just draw better. Look, you got to win a tournament. You need 2 things: you need to play well, and you need to draw well. You can't have one or the other.
As long as you have a hand that has like 3 or more land, you can't even draw badly because by the time your opponent hardcasts a Solitude on turn 12, you'll have found an answer to it. There's just nothing else that can happen. Unless
gone are the days of Temple Gojo. We have turn 2 plays. We have red and 6.
No, I know.
We do have on 3.
Right. We do have the Planeswalkers. The Planeswalkers can push the advantage earlier on. And like this last game, Daniel picked up, made all his land drops and was, I'm not going to say he won because of that, but it certainly helped a lot. And I would say,
that's a big part. We talked about it in the match. I think that's still true now is just getting ahead on mana, a big part of the equation in this matchup. Actually, one more thing I want to, as we go down to this match, I think both players still shuffling up, looking at sideboards, that kind of stuff. One thing I want to call out about Raja's deck before we go down is he includes 2 copies of Reprieve. When this card was spoiled, he was actually very adamant. This card is a huge upgrade over Remand, especially for control decks in the modern format. And I think we're going to see that kind of realized here, especially in these sideboard games. When you're facing down Dovin's Vetoes, and you're facing down Veil of Summers, actually turning the spell, something well with Venser, versus countering, big deal.
Right.
And that is, like I said, that's very likely to come up here. We didn't see it matter too much there, but when these Veils and these Dovin's Vetoes get added to the mix, it is a sizable upgrade. We're going to start to see some of that in action in these sideboard games. Your main deck cards improve.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Opening hands being drawn. Production, if you can give us either on the screen for Drake and I, or just somewhere the time in the round, because that game one was lengthy, and I'm curious. You can also put it in the messenger, and we can see it there. But
you just put it on the screen, put Joe's face on it. He always said if he won an invitational, he'd be the time or the extra turns.
Yeah, that would have been.
We just get that going. Just put a big Joe's face on the. You don't do that, please. But I would find it greatly amusing as these players playing at a brisk pace, looking to end this match within the bounds of time. 2 mana for both players. Well postulated. Hall of Storm Giants looks like Zagoth Triumph Held Fountain added tapped to the mix. Don't need that untapped. No, thank you. 37 minutes left in the round. Thank you, production, as Daniel goes fetching for his second land.
All right, that's not too bad. That does mean 2 more games like they just played would be pushing it. But
you speed up. As time goes on, look, you speed up because you have to. Zagoth Triumph looking to be grabbed by Daniel Weiser. And looks like both players access to 2 mana Veil of Summers. Manamo added to the mix. Weird land base. Drawing the mono blue utility lands are both players. 1 from Raja Go. Not stumbling is on the mana this time. No red and 6 early for Daniel. Raja's gotta love to see that.
Right.
Especially on the play.
This is
discard step? Discard prismatic ending? Wow. Draw go, no land from Raja? What is happening?
All right. Well, that's another way. I absolutely agree with Raja. Once your opponent misses the hand size, there's no reason to play anything relevant.
No, don't do anything.
Because if Daniel is allowed to counterspell something and then bricks on land again, that just allows him to not discard. So, yeah, Raja playing a cantrip here makes perfect sense because he's probably fine with that being countered. Otherwise, there it is. Here's a strong counter, and Daniel Weiser here is just trying to avoid discarding the hand size next turn.
You see Raja get the little nod, sure.
Yeah,
you got it.
He's like, I outplayed you on that one. I was going to discard that card.
Can't be bad to see that. One of the premium sideboard cards used on pre-order just to prevent the discard step. And Raja, of course, missing lands too, so not even that bad from Daniel's spot. Just kind of speaking to how goofy the state is. And Raja moves to discard, missing the One Ring.
Man, so now we're right back in it. So honestly, could we? I know Raja had to commit that preordain, otherwise he would have discard 2. Land on the top. Okay, maybe we'll actually have a functional game here. It looked like it could have got out of control here for Raja, but Daniel hits the 4th land and back in it at the cost of still a 1-for-1, just countering card he wouldn't have chosen to. Both players pitching powerful permanents, Ren 6 and a 1 ring.
You talk a little bit about how Magic cards these days tend to be more snowballs, a lot of mull drifters. The moving to discards in your control mirror because you're missing land drops, that reminds me of some old Magic if I've ever seen it. Just like, I don't know, cards in matters way less than just holding his mana up. I'm not going to let you resolve anything, so we'll just sit here and look at each other, discarding our cards. So goofy. But we have a real game now. Red and 6 on the stack. Raja thinking about how he wants to respond. Ken Noji's just happy with that one, unless it's going to get basically immediately. I can tell something like Leyline Binding. We see just a host of spells, obviously something missed. All about how Raja wants to start to navigate things here.
I feel like when your opponent doesn't have green mana available, you really want to jam counters. Although I think that's the Ether Gust. So look at it. Ren 6 goes to the bottom. Gust. Yeah, but you want to avoid running into Veil of Summer when you can. Ether Gust actually does that also.
Yeah, that's true. That one, another one good against. That's kind of what these cyber cards are about, right? Cards that are cheap, efficient, and don't get Veil of Summer, because that is like, that's the hammer. That's your mirror hammer. And when you're playing the NRG Championship, there's a lot of control on the NRG Series, a lot of control that does a lot of winning. Raja won last year with a bunch of control decks. You're going to see control. And so these players, they showed up with their Veil of Summers. Daniel, no exception. As Raja getting ahead on lands, access to 5 now. Daniel's 4. Did he find one? Looks like he did not. Here's another Ren and 6. Again, a card I think you have to keep off the board if you want to stay ahead on mana. Raja, no Ren and 6s in his deck at all. Okay, Counterspell going to eat that. Ren and 6. Does find a 5th land, though, does Daniel. And back to Raja we go. Players tied on mana. Ton of spells to work with.
When you're tied on mana here, if you can't press the advantage, which realistically the players can't without tapping low and putting themselves at risk. You can miss a couple land drops as long as you can defend yourself and be okay. Interesting that Flood Strike from Daniel came down post, so signaling that he does not have a Veil and Summer in hand, or I mean maybe trying to get tricky, but from Roger's
maybe just like overly stress the importance of that run, maybe be like, hey, look, I really need this, and then no, just kidding, I actually do have my 5th mana already. But Roger did find a land as well, found Polluted Delta. That's land 6. So Roger once again ahead on mana. Daniel fetching now. Sometimes when you talk about fetch lands, when you're missing lands, people try not to like crack them. Like, I want to increase my odds of whatever. Daniel choosing, no, I'm going to need the mana. I'm going to fetch my another green source now, which maybe he does have Veil, right? Like, he also, a lot of patience.
He also knows red and 6 is the bottom card of his deck, and that very well may be one of his better draws right now. So getting that back in there makes sense as well.
No land from Daniel. Does not have to discard. A lot of exchanges have happened. So right back to Roger we go. No land found, and right back to Daniel. Draw go. All old Magic. Love to see it. Just some draw go with a pile of colorful lands.
There's a story I remember from even predates my Magic career as a competitive player about a blue mirror back in the very old days, probably in the late 90s, where a player kept a hand of 7 islands in the control mirror, and then drew several lands in a row and discarded on purpose on turn 5, so the opponent would think he has a hand full of counterspells and not play any threats.
That's absurd. See, you don't see that anymore with all this stuff. That's so sick.
We're not quite to those old days, but this is there are better threats now than there were then, as we see Teferi Time Raveler come down, which is the ultimate threat.
Yeah, we see Roger crack both fetch lands, not looking to get caught with any uncracked fetches, and maybe just doesn't need the colors anyway. 4 mana getting tapped right away. It's going to be Subtlety going after Teferi. One of the better answers, and another one that does a pretty good job dodging Veil of Summer again.
Yeah.
Again, just threading the needle of not getting got early with Veil of Summer. I mean, it's going to find a target eventually, but as long as you can kind of keep yourself ahead and not run face first into it, I think you should. I think Roger's done a really good job of that this game.
Yeah.
And now we see Daniel considering responding in some capacity. One Ring's at the front of the hand. Can't see what counterspells or other reactions he may be considering. And he's just going to let it happen until the bottom goes to Fairy. He needs land. So these proactive plays, he has to just bottom.
And it's so dangerous to fight back there. I mean, he has to let it go because he doesn't have to. But if he fights over that and then Raja untaps plays, to Fairy or something, I mean, it could be, plus you don't even know you're going to win the counter war. It's just so risky. So the easiest thing to do, the safest thing to do a lot of times is just to let your opponent have whatever they're trying to have if it's not crushing. And Subtlety isn't crushing.
It's true. And like life total, certainly a resource in this matchup. We've seen Omnath be able to recoup that resource very, very quickly too. So the Subtlety, getting it for points matters, not the end all be all, as Raja does choose to add more to the board, tapping 4 mana for the One Ring. Only 2 mana up for Daniel. Speaks to a position of power here for Raja, and I think we do see extra copies of Counter Magic, including potentially a Force dialed up, so maybe you can fight twice, and with a One Ring running your Force, not even that big of a deal to get rid of some cards. You're going to have extra to work with anyways. We go back to Daniel. Raja in a commanding position.
Yeah, all right. So Daniel has Land Binding.
1 mana answers, got to be where it starts, and that is going to work. Take care of the One Ring.
Okay, so, I mean, a trade down on cards for Daniel, but certainly not a significant one in a matchup like this. And we play on.
Yeah, I mean, no follow-up, except did find a land, plays Besieging Court Endurance as land return. Subtlety getting over the red zone again. A little bit of a pause from Daniel, maybe considering doing something. Chooses not to. 3 more damage comes through. 6 mana for both players. Does Raja find a land? It does not look like it, but we have Lorraine revealed that can kind of phone it in. If we want to cycle that, we'll see where he chooses to start. Tapping Plains. Good binding of binding. No, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to island cycle this Lorraine revealed. So that's going to allow you to hit the land drops. Very powerful addition from Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth. Kind of a multi-format all-star at this point. I think we're talking about Copper, Modern, Legacy, everything.
Yeah, no, it's certainly seeing use. It's the new land cycling cards are so nice for enabling the pitch elementals and other pitch cards. Really, it's just minimizing the land count in your deck, Who knew? It's a valuable thing.
Yeah, you talk about the turbo Xerox theory and why cantrips are so powerful, just allowing you to hit your land drops or find spells. These kind of get to do that by just being a spell or, finding your land. And Leyline Binding here on end step, it looks like Roger found an island just passed. Leyline Binding is going to go after the subtlety. This is maybe that's a tough trade, I think, for Daniel, right?
Daniel can't be happy about that. And I actually was wondering 45 seconds ago, how many hits you take from subtlety before you waste a removal spell on it, even though you don't want to. And it looked like it was just one more for Daniel.
Yeah, no land for him again.
Yeah.
It means passing back to Raja. Raja, nothing but lands to work with, but that's the name of the game. Tap Steam Vents comes into play and just pass the turn back. Both players plenty of spells to work with. No land found again for Daniel. I think up to 7. Yeah, doing the quick check. Yeah, 7 cards. All right. Needs to find land so badly. It's been the story of both of these games. This time, Raja on the good side of things finds an island. Back to Daniel he goes. Raja finding lands just in time, and with his opponent missing land drops, not really under any pressure to make any actions. And it looks like Daniel recognizing that. We're flashing in a 3-2 Lifelinker. Entex.
Yeah, makes sense. How many? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Raja, at some point, I'm sure it won't be soon, does have the Hall of Storm Giants that can block with currently would be 3 mana left over, counting the Storm Giants itself, which isn't terrible, but
Daniel likely would have played any Besagers he's drawn, so you don't really even have to worry about that in response.
Well, he can't play any
down for Daniel just in time.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel can't play any more Besagers. They already got one in play.
Sure.
So it's conceivably, conceivably he would have one stuck. Here is One Ring. Manamo tapping as part of the cost.
That one may not even resolve as Counterspell getting into the fight. And now this is the first opportunity for Veil to look good. And there it is. There is the Veil. Raja has to know that was coming. All the mana to work with. We'll see how he wants to respond. To see a force among other options. How hard do you want to fight?
Well, I think it's probably worth at least one more, especially since Raja has a million cards in hand as well. And you want to give yourself, space in your hand to draw to replace those cards. And here is a hardcast force
negation.
Yeah, and this is
the
value.
This is actually the second to last counterspell, right? Only one counterspell left over in Raja's hand, a couple Wonderings and Teferis beyond that. So we're committing a lot to this fight.
All right, Daniel clarifying there on what Raja's targeting with this force, and it is going after the Veil.
And that's a pretty good trade. I think Daniel actually not too upset with that. I mean, 2 counterspells for on mana, taps 5 mana, 7 mana. I mean, working through the counter spells has to happen. And hardcast Force Negation, something you got to be pretty excited to see, is Force Negation quite a premium in this matchup. So as far as anything, it's losing the fight. What it could look like where Daniel would be excited, I think that was in the upper echelon of results, as his name has changed to 3.
Yeah, production. Okay, man, we're having trouble on the left side player's name apparently this afternoon.
That's okay. I think 3 is maybe a little bit foreshadowing, as 3 is, I believe, the game we're going to be going to after this. Yes, untaps his pile of resources. We'll see exactly who wants to commit to the board. Teferi and One Ring among the mix. And looks like we're going to start at Teferi. I like that. Picked up another force. Great pickup there. See how much he wants to commit to the board right now. We can do Teferi and One Ring with 2 mana left over.
All right. Well, here's the spot where Veil Summer ceases to be an effective counter. Again, doesn't have enough mana. I mean, by virtue of having acted first by playing One Ring on his own turn, not that that's a mistake. It's just what the cards dictated he needed to do. Now, Raja's follow up here lands.
Are we bouncing something? Are we bouncing Leyline or anything like that? Or are we upticking? What do you want to do with this? Looks like
there is a Sawtooth on the board, so I mean. If it is, so regains the One Ring, but Daniel gets his Leyline back, and this Teferi is unprotected for the moment.
No protection trigger, too. We do know Raja has his own copy of Solitude, so can flash that in if that's where he wants to be. Drew a Plains off of the One Ring. I think we do still have a land we can play for turn. We do. So Plains is going to enter. So now we can Solitude with 2 mana up. That's actually a really key land to draw there. So now we can Solitude with the counterspell backup. And I think there's a force too. So even though, a little bit unprotected right now, and there's a Leyline that we know we just give Daniel back, we have a lot to check what Daniel's next turn is. And this is where you start to see that mana advantage matter. Because Daniel may not be able to deploy enough stuff in order to win the fight he could maybe otherwise win with all these spells in his hand.
All right. So we know Leyline's probably going to lead. Well, okay, attack is probably going to lead things off, and we know it won't get through. Does Raja even spend 5 here or spend a card?
I like spending 5 here. The Teferi is like the best way to secure your lead in this game. So keeping it around seems worthwhile. And it's not even like we're committing everything. Like we already have counterspell quote unquote backup thanks to Teferi. So his, Daniel's counterspells are functionally blank right now, except maybe Veil of Summer, which you can lead on.
Right.
And so just keeping that advantage, especially when the shields are basically as down as they're going to be for the rest of the game, assuming this works, it seems like it makes a lot of sense. And here's Prismatic Ending for 3.
Okay.
He's going to let that one go through. Leyline Binding for 1. That's the other thing we knew about on this turn. So, yeah, we just let that go. That's going to answer the One Ring again. Did get a card off of it, of course, but, changes go. Not mad about it.
Yeah, one card is, better than most of the alternatives.
And we have a threatened play now as Solitude gets to work. Daniel's counterspells, of course, back online. Only 3 mana up. We'll see how Raja wants to navigate this turn. I saw a lot of reactive spells in his hand, but I think he's been holding on a copy of One Ring for a little bit.
He also has another Solitude, I think. So there is a chance to double the beatdown. You can pick up Kahira for next turn.
Special action. Pick up Kahira. Your move. Back to Daniel we go. And this, hey, the +1 vigilance could start to matter here. Get to do some attacking and blocking. Daniel going to attempt a Teferi of his own. Can't imagine Raja wants this one to happen.
No. And if he lets it through, I would think we'd see the Solitude in response anyway. There's going to be something done here. It's going to be a veto.
Get that out of here. And Veil of Summer, the only thing that works there, and no Veil of Summer for Daniel. We saw him use one already this game. Steam Bits does have a land. Chooses not to shock it in. Life total consideration now. Solitude in play for Raja, and 4 mana all Daniel needs as we go back to Raja's turn. Pile of mana to work with, and to combat we go right away. 3 more points.
All right, so Daniel done to 10. That means, let's see. Okay, it's not going to be Kahira. It's going to be Teferi, and that's going to mean a force with a available green up, but there's a Veil of Summer from Raja. And Daniel's like, all right.
I've seen enough.
Yeah.
You want to talk about concessions for time? That is emblematic of the Veil of Summer's impact in this matchup. One resolves, and that's usually what happens. The player who gets Veil of Summer concedes, because it's the hammer in the mirror. And that was very much what we talked about we would see in this control mirror, but this time in Raja's favor. So, players are going to go to a game 3.
Well, we saw Daniel stand up from the table, so he's probably not conceding the match. He's probably going to the bathroom, but you never know. Maybe that was such a resounding defeat in game 2. He decided it wasn't worth the trouble. But in the meantime, we expect him to return. So let's go ahead and bring up the stage 1 structure. So if you've tuned in and managed to dodge the explanation video, I don't know how many times they ran it this morning. We can walk you through where we're at in the event. So stage 1 of 4. The players are in 2 pods of 8, and they're going to play every other person in their pod. We're in round 6 of those 7. This morning they played 2 rounds of Pioneer, 2 rounds of Standard. You saw that if you were here. We're now in 3 rounds of Modern with 1 remaining after this one. At the end of all of that, you can see on the screen there, top 2 seeds in each pod will skip ahead to Sunday morning. And by skip ahead, they'll go to dinner early and then wait for everyone else to catch up to them on Sunday morning. Bottom 2 players in each pod are out. So at the end of round 7, we will say goodbye to 4 players of the event. The evening portion of the tournament today will only be played by the 3rd through 6th seeds, which you can see here, double elimination. The players will get paired, sit down. If, for example, Drake and I were facing each other, I would say, I don't want to play Standard. Drake would say, I don't want to play
Modern.
Okay, then Drake and I would play Pioneer. That's how it's going to work this evening. So we can't tell you ahead of time what formats you'll be watching, because it will be determined as each match begins. Anyway, win 2 matches and you advance. If you win 2 in a row, you don't have to play the 3rd one. If you lose 2, whether in a row or out of 3, then you're out. And 8 players will resume play Sunday morning. So that's how this is going to work. Let's take a look at what the players are playing for. Until Daniel gets back, we've got plenty of material to fill time with. So the prize pool, you can see there, along with Raja, who did win last year, as Drake was saying. 6,000 up top for first, plus a few invites. A re-invite to the NRG Championship next year. And for the first time ever, NRG is very proud that the winner of our championship will receive a full Pro Tour invite. And importantly, as there were questions about this week, I'm informed, it will pass down. So I can tell you that there are 4 players in the field already qualified for Pro Tour Chicago: Daniel Weiser, Grayson Nemitz, Theodore Zhang, and Derek Davis. So if any of those 4 players win, the second place player will receive the Pro Tour invite. Otherwise, it will go to whoever wins, and they will get to play in Pro Tour Chicago, which very conveniently for all these players is not very far away. Buffalo Grove, Illinois being something like 30 miles away from Chicago. The Pro Tour being, I believe, 6 weeks from now, potentially 7. I'm not 100% on that, but it is Pioneer and Murders at Karlov Manor Limited. So you can see the winner of our event there. Anyway, Drake Sasser, how are you feeling so far? We're in the midst of a control battle. I feel fairly justified in saying.
I think that's accurate description.
We have one rings on both sides, right? We have two fairies on both sides. Does Ren and 6 give Daniel Weiser an advantage, or is there some alternative that Raja has that's going to push him to be equivalent of that?
So, like I mentioned before, I think if you're talking about like advantages that Raja has in control mirrors, you're talking about his selection of spells, things like choosing reprieve, things like, having less considerations for like his mana base can function mostly off blue-white. Like you have little edges like that, but Ren and 6 is the hugest player, I think, for Daniel Weiser in this matchup. We saw that come to fruition in game 1. If it can just down on turn 2, Raja has no answer. It can pull Daniel ahead, like, what the exact matchup's about, making these land drops, getting ahead on card advantage, everything you could want right then. But if it doesn't come down on turn 2 or even turn 3 or whatever in those early turns, and Raja gets time to get underneath himself with his mana base and set up all his counter spells, we could see games like we saw in game 2, where a little bit more efficient counters, having those more of those spells than those proactive, like whatever planeswalkers, things that you're committing to the board, can set Raja up to be able to navigate the game, to play a longer game, and to eventually win by just having one payoff piece that works instead of a pile of payoff pieces that you're trying to make happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Love to see it. The control magic like this is stuff I love. I know you were a Miracles person back in the day. You love your control decks, especially control decks.
Not anymore.
now you're a dice strong guy. You throw the dice bag at people and hope you win. Sure, but I still have a soft spot for control.
Sure. No, me too. All right. So the players are shuffling up. There are some mulligans happening, I believe, but this almost doesn't feel like the same format that we watched last round, where we had Amulet and Hammer slugging it out. Here we are being very careful, very, very. There we're committing stuff to the board and seeing if it sticks and seeing if it wins. Here we're hesitant to commit to the board because we don't want our opponent to untap with a mana advantage and then play something that's worse. So drawing up hands, and we're getting ready for game number 3, round 6 of the NRG Championship. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying it. And let's see. We're going. Daniel Weiser with a Windswept Heath. Not a blue
First land drop made by both players.
Let's see. Daniel Weiser. No island here, right? We don't want a second warning.
No, not grabbing island specifically. Obviously we're probably gonna be grabbing a triome. There's no blood boots or any considerations like that. Not even any field of ruins or things to think about. You can just grab your triomes, have perfect mana, no rush. Just make sure that you have your green mana when you need it. And I think that's part of the consideration to grabbing the Zagoth triome right away over something like the Rogren triome that maybe is a little bit better for cashing your spells. Obviously speaks to your hand, but in general, I mean, the way this matchup's going to play out for both players is just fetch triumph. Okay, now we can start playing Magic. The only question is, does Daniel have a turn 2 Ren and 6 here that he wants to play? And this quick fetch maybe suggests the answer to that question is yes.
Steam Fence that can indeed fire it out there. So number of Raja's answers to this is what?
I love to just throw it, and Daniel throws it right away. Raja, maybe a little bit of a disappointed look there. Maybe only a little bit of a slip as he goes ahead and fetches. Don't think we have any copies of Spell Snare this week, and we've seen some of our decks supporting that one.
It's just the Force of Negations, it looks like, in the 75 as far as turn 1 answers to Ren 6, and it does land. So, all right, Raja, if you can remove it now, we're still okay. Although then that does mean the shields are somewhat down for a follow-up to Fairy if there was one.
Right.
So
Yeah,
maybe
that
you're
sets
kind
up a
of
lot of draws for Daniel. You might be in a little bit of trouble here, even if you have the answer. I mean, it's already got a card. Yeah, it looks like no answer even now. Maybe he doesn't even want to play it if he has it. And
right.
Ren's going to go ahead and pick up the Windswept Teeth. Yeah, the Windswept Teeth right away. Daniel thinking about whether he wants to play that one or the Flooded Strand. Chooses to play the Windswept Teeth, and back over to Raja we go. No in-step action for Raja. Means that it's just a Flooded Strand to go. So this is looking a lot like we saw game one.
Right.
Yeah, you want to talk about this matchup in the control mirrors. Raja normally pretty well suited in the control mirrors. Actually, ironically, play draw, normally something you would think doesn't really matter that much. Because of Ren and 6, this asymmetry matters a ton. Being able to get this Ren and 6 underneath the 2-mana counter spells is such a big deal for Daniel. And we already see that in action as Ren's going to tick up a third time on this turn.
And that's why players play things like Spell Pierce that go dead later in the game. And in matches like this, in matchups like this, that go dead later in the game thing happens every single time. But in the early stages here, I mean, with no Force of Negations main deck, only just a pair on the sideboard that we obviously know came in. I take it back. There are subtleties main deck. So there is another answer to Ren and 6 on turn 1. But obviously Raja didn't have it. And
Daniel's doing the hand count check. How many things do I have to play? Only one. All right, great. Here's my tapped Island Fountain. Go ahead. Looking to get some more mana sources in play that aren't fetch lands. Of course, can put one into play next turn if need be. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Moved to discards and discarded the Windswept Teeth. All right, so we don't even need it. We're just styling now. As Rogren Triumph fetched for Raja, he's really going to have to get an answer to this Ren before it starts to threaten Ultimate, because then, I mean, you start getting the territory where Daniel's incentivized to fight over like answers to the Ren, and then if it actually emblems, I mean, the game's almost over right there.
Right.
So outside of just the land advantage it provides, which it certainly does, I mean, this Ultimate can also start to win the game. As here comes Teferi. It is Teferi. We'll see how Daniel wants to respond. 3 mana up. Can't imagine he wants this one to happen. It's going to be tap out for Force Negation. Veil of Summer's going to protect it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
A win for Raja.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, while tapped out, a very significant card on the board here. And Ren is 6, a turn away from Ultimate, is a turn away. It's not there yet. And has the advantage swung back? I wouldn't want to call a leader at this point. Daniel's got more resources, and Raj is gonna offer Daniel the choice. You can tick down and give me a turn more before you could ultimate, or do you go up and leave my Teferi on the board, which realistically Daniel probably can't do. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I think you have to tick down, which, I mean, it maybe feels like a win for Daniel, but that just shows that Raj does not have an answer to the Ren, but Daniel's able to exploit that. The One Ring going to be able to come down right away. And again, we're starting to see these exchanges where even if Raja has like a Leyline Binding or something to answer the One Ring, a card's already gotten off of it. And part of your plan, I think if you're Raja, especially with a Ren that's been on the table this long, is you need Daniel to flood. You need to draw a bunch of lands, and like the Force Negation being the counterspell of choice for Daniel maybe speaks to that a little bit, does expose him to the Veil of Summer blowout like we saw, but Raja's still behind here, both on board and just in resources.
Yeah, dramatically far behind now. I mean, you've got 2 permanents you have to deal with. Both can run away with the game. I mean, I guess Ren 6 is an actual win condition, whereas, I mean, too many cards from the One Ring. Daniel might just be at the point where discarding hand size becomes a thing, and everyone's tapping out now. We're
in the tap out portion of this game now, and right away.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you might ask, I didn't know there was a tap out portion of these games, but yeah, there is. 2 mana up with Teferi plussing this time, so Raj is more interested in defending it, and probably will be able to do so, barring something like Leyline Binding and Prismatic Ending.
Yeah, it would need to be quite a bit. I mean, obviously you could have quite a bit thanks to the One Ring able to tick up again. Here is Leyline Binding. 2 mana up for Raja. We'll see if he wants to fight over this. Imagine if you're ticking Teferi up, you're planning to fight over it.
Yeah.
Maybe the answer is no. What is?
It's that
Ray of Revelation.
Wow.
Oh, check that out.
So Ray of Revelation is a destroying enchantment with flashback. So Leyline Binding comes into play, but before it exiles a card, gets destroyed. So the card does not actually leave play, doesn't blink at all. It just stays in play because of the way cards are templated nowadays. But there is another binding. So Teferi is gone. But
Answers
That-
rolled up.
yeah.
We already got the Revelation flashback. So that's, I mean, it's 2-for-1 face up and it's mana efficient. Very much kind of the card that you want in this matchup and you want to line up this way. Interesting, Daniel's one to commit the second leyline binding, knowing that second half only costs 1 mana. Maybe looking to fight over it?
Yeah, I mean, Ray of Revelation a one of in Raja's sideboard, but yeah, the strength here, obvious. Picking up 2 leyline bindings is huge.
I didn't even know it was for this matchup necessarily. I was like, is this for Blood Moons? What am I looking at? And yeah, it just looks incredible here against specifically leyline binding. Maybe speaking to an outsized impact that card has had on this format. The deck building considerations there, and only 1 green source for Raja. If he wants to flashback Ray of Revelation, currently cannot do so, and have Veil of Summer backup. But he appears he does have an extra green source. Doesn't have the Ray of Veil of Summer. So let's see how we're going to kick things off. It is going to be the flashback Ray of Revelation targeting the leyline binding. We'll see if Daniel wants to fight over that at all. Has the option to.
He does, but then he's a spot where do I want to?
The One Ring drawn 3 cards so far, plenty of resources to work with, and the plan of having Daniel flood getting worse and worse every time that One Ring goes down. Beseiju in hand among other cards.
All right, Teferi's back in there.
Ren 2 running can be a grueling way to die for Raja.
I suppose that's true.
Means your leyline binding's not liable to work. It looks like Ray of Revelation does work. Teferi's back in at 4 loyalty. No decision made on that yet. 4 mana tapped. What is this? Your own One Ring. Okay, so Raja's going to get protection from everything. Going to grab a card right away. Only 1 mana left over. Has but a land for turn. Is that Misty Rainforest? See what he wants to do now with Teferi.
I mean, it's got to be something. What do you? You still have the looming threats. Your board is much better now, but you're certainly not ahead. And the Rending 6 is. I mean, you can't let that ultimate with another turn with one. I mean, there's enough cards in hand for both players now. It's gonna be hard to stop your opponent from doing something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, 3 cards from One Ring is just, I mean, this is kind of the territory where you're escaping from card advantage and into closer to Demonic Tutor for whatever you want in your deck, because you're just seeing so many cards. You talk about that with like Griselbrand or whatever. You just see so many cards. It's functionally like you're tutoring. It's part of the problem with Dig Through Time and cards like it. And the One Ring has already drawn 7 cards. It's Griselbrand activation. Or sorry, 6 cards. Close enough. And here's Teferi to go ahead and pick up the One Ring, mitigate some of that damage, and shut down counterspells from both players entirely. Look on Raja's face is not the look of a man who feels ahead.
No, certainly not. And Daniel, if replace the One Ring, once again, with a Teferi unopposed on the other side, now makes sense to tap out. There's no reason to hold up mana if you can't deal with Teferi. And you're the one with, in Daniel's shoes, have the red on 7.
Yeah, and we're moving to discards, multiple cards. Oh boy, Raja's in such a tough spot. You know, obviously Raja got to untap with a One Ring of his own. That's not nothing.
No,
you know, there's a Teferi on 1. Maybe that's something you can latch onto, but no Rens to just play and pick it off. And really, Raja not having access to Ren and 6, I think, has felt the most here. Can't just pick off that Teferi on 1 like Daniel's been able to do to Raja this game.
But Raja, perked up in his seat a little bit, though. I mean, he may have, if he is able to answer the Ren 6 with something.
Yeah, this is a key turn. If we find some prismatic endings and some leyline bindings and some help off of this One Ring activation, we are in this game still. But this is probably like the last window. If you don't get some of these permanents off the board, I mean, once again, Ren ultimating, One Ring starting to go to work again, Teferi stopping any reactions from you. Time is now or never. Yeah. This is the turn. You got to start getting some action done right now.
Yeah, and what do we have? There's no. It's got to be Bindings, March of Otherworldly Light, Prismatic Ending. Those are the cards that Raja needs here. And even if he's got 2 of them, you're still leaving your opponent with something that's a nuisance.
Correct. I mean, you can maybe Teferi, pick up the One Ring.
Yeah.
And then ending, and that's like something. Maybe you have some mana left over, maybe not. I mean, obviously, Daniel gets to tap with so much mana and cards, but that's at least leaving it to where you're not just in trouble still on board.
Yeah, and at some point, Daniel having access to extra cards becomes, less of a problem because Daniel can't, utilize 12 cards a turn. All right, here is.
Okay, we're bouncing the One Ring right now, and there's a prismatic ending that he went to cast on Teferi and pulled back on it.
He decided I think he decided if I'm going to bounce one ring with Teferi anyway, I may as well do it first and see what I draw, which I think is correct.
Sure.
He does have endings for both Planeswalkers, and now with some mana left over.
Nadovin's veto in hand and a forced backup.
This
like
is,
even
this is
around
fine.
Veil. This is the turn he needed. Yeah,
absolutely. Wow. He needed answers to the permanents. He got rid of all 3 of them, at least temporarily, as far as the One Ring goes. And now Daniel's in a spot where committing 4 mana to replay the One Ring, Raja might be comfortable letting it resolve at this point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, especially with his running so much. He's got a lot of life to work with. Daniel actually lower on life total, which might weirdly start to matter. But I was going to say, unless Omnath comes down, but here's Omnath. Of course, Daniel has access to a lot of stuff. Counterspell, going after it right away, cannot respond with anything. Interesting that Daniel had access to a Veil, could have led on it to pull out any interaction, chose not to. Speaks to maybe valuing a little bit higher throughout the course of this game. As land number 4 played, we have another follow-up. It's going to be the One Ring. We can force a negation this if we want, can Raja, assuming he has a blue card, which it looks like he definitely does.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you've got it, if you value this One Ring at all from Daniel, you might as well, because you can replace your hand immediately. But Raja just may not be too concerned about it at this point.
Yeah, yours is ahead of his. Maybe just try to end the game. Like, I have as much mana as you. I'm going to have more resources than you from One Ring specifically. And maybe I can just overwhelm you. And with having a Teferi, that's very possible. Mm-hmm. Having his Teferi in play, Daniel with no Teferi, and this could be very, very disciplined. A lot of players, probably myself included, would have forced negation there.
Daniel choosing not to draw with One Ring here may have already been on 7 cards in hand, and may not just need extra cards. Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, okay, now it's going to draw.
No, we're on Raja's turn. He played Flooded Share and Go, and Raja has not activated his One Ring. I think we're at the One Ring on opponent's turns and set up for big turns. But this Teferi is so impactful on Raja's board right now. Is Daniel immediately reaching for his One Ring, needs to find more things like Omnath and cards that can put pressure on Raja and his cards. And now we're going to see the lead on Veil of Summer. Mm-hmm. This is the play he had available last turn. Going to go for it this turn. Does not draw a card right now.
Yeah, but cards are not
not the bottleneck. Not the bottleneck at all.
Not for either player. That's really something that the One Ring has changed about these long games. Veil of Summer used to be so great, and partially because of the card.
Now it's just powering stuff through.
Yeah.
And you can see Raja kind of stuck on what to do, more or less flush on resources, just trying to figure out how to navigate this Veil of Summer. The mirror breaker for this matchup. Looks like we're reaching for Dovin's veto.
Anything will work, as he knows from Teferi Timer over locking out Daniel. So that's not going to go. Second one.
How about second one? This one will draw a card. When you see the cracked smile on Raja's face, all right, yeah, that's fair. It makes sense. You would have a pile of these. Again, with all this mana left over for Daniel, it feels really hard not to fight over this.
Yeah,
question is how hard and with what?
I mean, it resolves. Wow. Okay. But Raja can still have answers. Like you were saying, reprieve still matters. There's subtlety. So this is not completely shields down, even though, which is weird to say, given that Daniel's cards are uncounterable.
Yeah. Daniel's cards are uncounterable. Raja's cards also uncounterable. And specifically unreactable, if you will. And there's a Teferi looking to shut down all interaction. Have to imagine Raja might flash something in, a creature if nothing else. And it is just going to be a Solitude flashed in.
Okay, that's not that bad from Daniel's perspective.
Oh yeah, not at all. I mean, you have to be happy to see that. I mean, obviously Raja's going to do it, use his mana before he can't. Mm-hmm. And now shields were already mostly down because Veil of Summer resolving. Now they're entirely down. No reprieves. Subtlety turned off thanks to the Teferi. Teferi now has something to pick up. Raja maybe just happy that his One Ring's not getting picked up. But now I think if Daniel has an Omnath here, he might actually start to gain the advantage back from Raja, who looked to be in a great position to start this turn.
Daniel's played a land already. I mean, Omnath. I think taking out a binding on the Teferi would be significant, and that's what it's going to be. So now Daniel has the Teferi advantage, and this game has flipped. Even though Raja still has One Ring on 3.
He could have 4 cards coming and bindings of his own and the such. You know, it's this game. There's a lot of back and forth still because players just got such bursts of cards. That's going to continue to be the case for the rest of the game. Now, everything that has happened with the mana bases up until now matters because players are just going to be using their mana every single turn because they just have all these cards to work with thanks to the One Ring. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right about that. So with 3 mana plus 2 force negations in the 75 for Daniel to defend his Teferi this turn. And we'll
Veil of
see.
Summers left. Do we have any
I don't
more?
think there's any. I think we've seen 2. I think there are 2. So that's
That is
over
correct.
with. And here's just Roger starting off, draw for the turn, draw 4 more off the One Ring.
I'll take more. Thank you very much. I need help for this turn.
Puts himself on a 2-turn clock from the One Ring, but that's something to worry about later.
Right.
There's a Manamo.
Does he need more? Binding to binding, he gets Teferi's own ring. Oh my god. Untap with Manamo, 9 cards this turn?
Plus the draw step. That's 10. Raja with 10 fresh cards this turn.
Oh my gosh.
Does he have the mana to spend enough of them? Does he have enough cheap ones to get out of this?
I mean, we know he has solitudes and subtleties and force negations and the like, and
none of those are what we need.
Yeah, well, if you can turn those back on by answering this Teferi, I think they can have some text. But the Teferi is the problem numero uno, and that has been the case kind of for both players every single turn that we've played so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, leading with Teferi of his own. That's not a cheap way to lead things off, but it is an effective one. If it lands, he'll be good. It is not going to. Well, I guess Counterspell will take care. I guess it will guarantee that won't resolve.
Yeah, it's just Counterspell. It's not not exiled. So there we go. That one's taken care of. Oh wow, look.
Yeah, that's a large
lot of cards.
A large hand there. That is a lot going on. At least there's no Narcits. I mean, a year or two ago there would have been multiple Narcits on each player's deck list, and this would be more of a Flusterstorm.
Flusterstorm on Prismatic Ending, finding a target this late, and it looks great.
Yeah,
and that is the game.
Wow.
Roger concedes. Wow. That Flusterstorm comes in clutch. You talked about cards like that, could potentially expire. Flusterstorm, great because it doesn't in these kinds of matchups because you do just use so many spells. And that one, more so maybe than Veil of Summer, looks like it broke that final game. And I mean, a lot of the same story where we saw Ren kind of pulling ahead the entire game. Roger did a great job navigating it back to more or less parity. And now, I mean, the combination of 2 Veil Summers and a Flusterstorm was able to kind of get underneath Raja and seal the game, even though we saw 10 cards in that final turn.
Yeah, that was quite. I mean, that was well executed, well played, and really probably taxing on both players. And they've still got more rounds to play today. All right, we've got a backup match, so let's go ahead and get it going.
Yeah, I believe it is Matthew Weiss on Is It Murktide versus Derek Davis, somebody we've seen already once today. Team of Rhinos back kind of against the wall. 1-4 is Derek Davis.
Derek Davis has got a lot of work to do here. And Matthew Weiss not going to be in any mood to give away matches either at 2 and 3. So depending on how things play out within the pod, I mean, it's conceivable 3 and 4 will be live for, in fact, likely 3 and 4 will be like live for elimination rounds. 2 and 5, even. I mean, if there were no winless players, right? So we know everyone's got at least one win,
right?
So Matthew's going to want to pick up at least one more win, if not 2. Well, all these players are trying to win all their games. So
yeah, obviously,
yeah, really kind of.
And Derek's someone that we've seen in this matchup before. And I don't know if he's whatever. I'm sure he tested this matchup a ton. It's going to be one of the more popular decks coming in. But we saw this is very much deja vu. We've seen this exact thing before on camera with you and me in the booth already today. Derek's got turn 1 suspend crashing footfalls in the Murktide matchup, and something we saw the Murktide player previously do a very good job of is getting an early threat and at least threatening early threats. And that way Derek has to spend his mana answering them instead of doing something else. I didn't really see that. Turn 1 preordained from Matthew Weiss, although here is the Ledger Shredder. Maybe spoke too soon. Bobble to trigger it right away. But
they always have the bobble. They always have the bobble. Express iteration hits bobble 100% of the time is at least my understanding. Okay, bobble gets connived away. All right, Matthew Weiss.
The second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ryan Hayes said he felt this matchup was pretty decent for him as the Murktide player against Derek Davis. We'll see if Matthew Weiss is able to repeat the result that Hayes was able to achieve.
Yeah, a little bit of the same look as far as the deck's constructed. We see a lot of that same counterspell split, like the Spell Singer, the Stern Scolding, stuff like that. So, I mean, very much going to be deja vu for Derek Davis, seeing more or less the exact same deck. Unclear if those players necessarily, collaborated at all, but certainly a very similar look for one of the more popular decks in the modern format. Something, I mean, to call out, we talked about Rhinos, Murktide, 2 most popular decks in this format, like here at the NRG Champs. A lot of people, when Fury was banned, argued that Grief should have been taken with it. I believe only a single player in our event chosen to register Grief in the modern format. Not
That's
definitive, but something to think about. Something you imagine would be good against all these blue decks.
Yeah, absolutely. As the Ledger Shredder continues across here. Yeah, the modern format, and you can check out all the deck lists on the NRG website. The modern format maybe a little more stock, it turned out, than Pioneer and Standard as well, as far as deck lists the players submitted go. Pioneers had more outliers, I think.
Right.
Modern, you were unlikely to face something that you hadn't prepared for, I would say, the way that things shaped up in this event. So all these players should have practice and real ideas, thoughts on how their matchups are going to play out here.
An exchange, I think that we can call out there with the Flame of Anor going after the Ledger Shredder and eating a counterspell, something we didn't really see happen previously. A lot of times the Murktide player lets their threats get killed, hold the counterspells for exactly Crashing Footfalls, and we do have a second one here, but that one's an upkeep. And now Matthew tapped out. He has access to a Charlotte's Agent. That's going to trigger Ledger Shredder, and if there's no Force of Negation, then this Crashing Footfalls is going to resolve. And it looks like there's not any Force of Negations in the main deck at all. So yeah, this Crashing Footfalls is going to resolve. 10 power in play right now. And this is part of the risk of keeping your Ledger Shredder in play, is you can end up basically taxed on your counter spells and your counter spell mana. And I mean, both of those happening here, as Derek looks like he's going to be able to resolve this Crashing Footfalls. And there's not many great ways to answer in the main deck. You're talking about like 2 Unholy Heats. It's going to be a 2-for-1 kind of thing.
Now that we've seen it a couple of times now, I'm amused that Derek Davis, when he's cascading, the deeper he goes in the deck, he just kind of grin bigger and bigger just because he's amused at the Crushing Falls not being on top of the deck. And twice now it's gone like 30 or 40 cards. And he's just this huge grin on his face. He's so amused. It's like, can you believe this wasn't in the top 5 cards? What do you know?
Yeah, what the heck? I just have to say, what is so awkward? You're just like sitting there, like,
I know,
kind of just playing with yourself, just like moving cards around. Like, it is such as an onlooker that doesn't know a lot about Magic, you look really goofy. It's like, what is happening to this player? You're just like casually, doesn't look distraught, and his entire deck is just going in a different zone. So what is happening? A Cascade, a very weird mechanic to look upon if you're not very familiar with the game, and a popular one in the modern format is Matthew looking for help. Thanks to the broken expressive iteration.
Well, all he needs is a castable card, and then his Ledger Shredder can actually hold off one of the Rhinos.
Big deal. Like being able to start blocking Rhinos is something that usually only Murktide itself is capable of. Getting Ledger Shredder up to that capacity could actually be big game, provided Derek does not have more. I mean, we saw him be able to have the dead gone right away, and we do see a Flame of Anor right there. Not actually able to be cast right now. If there's 6 point of toughness comes, then you're talking about getting 2-for-1 kind of stuff there, but maybe that's just worth it to get the Ledger Shredder off the table. Ragavan found and put into exile. Are we casting that one? We sure are. That's going to trigger Ledger Shredder right away. Matthew very quick to activate, or rather to trigger the Ledger Shredder. Not going to miss that one.
Yeah, this is someone looking for help, though. I mean, Ragavan's obviously not going to contribute a whole lot right now. I guess he can trade with Charlotte's Agent, which is
block Charlotte's Agent. That's something. I mean, it keeps us from dying. Subtlety hits the bin. Misty Rainforest, the land for turn. 2 mana up. I believe there's another counterspell in hand. So, I mean, as far as follow-up turns Matthew Weiss could have, it's got to be one of the good ones. Is it good enough?
Yeah. Don't expect to see an attack here. And just holding back. I mean, if there's no attack here from Derek, which there currently isn't going to be unless the board changes, then Matthew can feel pretty good about his position, I think.
How problematic, like assuming that you're intending on blocking with this Ledger Shredder, I mean, how problematic is a card like, I mean, any removal spell really, like we're talking about Fire Ice, Flame of Anor, even just a Violent Outburst. Like Violent Outburst specifically could trigger the Ledger Shredder if Derek chooses to actually cast the Footfalls, which might actually be a consideration. And, just being able to actually trade with this Ledger Shredder seems to be kind of what the name of the game is for Derek. So if he can get through that, then I mean that's what Matthew has going on. That's right. Really problematic.
No, you're right. That's what the game is about now for Derek Davis, is getting this Ledger Shredder off the board. Even an Otawara would be enough, although it's already in play. Right. And I don't have his deck list open anymore, but I doubt there's 2 of them. So here is another set of Rhinos. And okay, 2 sets of Rhinos. That's a lot to deal with. Yeah, that's a lot to deal with.
But I think that Matthew does have the counter spell dialed up, and this also triggers Ledger Shredder, which makes it even harder to actually get off the table. maybe feels Murktide Regent?
Derek Davis. I picked Derek Davis to win the championship last year, and he got crushed. He got absolutely smashed. He is not wanting to repeat his performance from last year, but at 1-4, and he needs a recovery here.
Getting crushed again for the moment, at least. I mean, not out of the tournament. That's the way it works. But
I mean, these Pro Tour. I mean, people. I mean, I was told yesterday. I said something, and I was told like, "Hey, UWrg has some of the best players in the Midwest," and yeah, that's proving true. As Derek Davis, a Pro Tour mainstay at this point, I think it would be fair to describe him.
Yeah,
having trouble getting through these events.
I mean, they're super tough. I mean, last round we just saw, Roger, the previous winner, against whatever, 13th on the ELO.
Yeah,
that's insane. Like, that's so absurd. The caliber of player playing in this event, it is, a lot bigger than maybe other people have spoken about in the past. The competition is really steep. No free rolls in this one.
No, and we are running it back next, or I guess this next year in 2024 when we get a chance. The end of the round, maybe we'll bring up the schedule that's been announced so far. If you want to try and make your way into the event, into this event, and compete with these players, that's certainly something you can do. I think we had only a handful of repeat players from last year, including Raja and Derek Davis. A lot of newcomers, so it is tough.
The winner of this event, we're going to be able to re-queue. And maybe some of that is, now just winning an event. That's good enough. Any weekend you show up, if you just win an event, qualify. So give yourself as many chances as possible, show up to all the events. I mean, this is the way we did it back in the day. Give yourself as many chances as possible if you made it.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, if I wasn't here in the booth, I think I'd be in the trenches. This is a really special event. These players, you can tell, I mean, they battle against each other all year, and they very personable towards each other. A lot of them know each other. A lot of them are friends. Some of them aren't, but they very much know each other going into the event. And I think that adds a really interesting point of complexity when it comes to preparing for this event.
All right. Matthew, looking over screen, are we looking super close for Delirium, or is there Murktide being lined up?
I think we're thinking about Murktide. I think some of the players are laughing about it. He's inconspicuously like, how many spells do I have? And there is the Murktide Regent grin on Derek Davis's face. He saw that one coming. And this is, I mean, jokes aside, one of the biggest draws for Matthew Weiss here, as far as now we have multiple Rhinos check and maybe just a lethal in-air attack coming soon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if this resolves, which it will, it appears, there's one more passing on the turn, and then Matthew can send to the skies, and Derek has no current answers to a significant. Well, actually, Matthew's not going to wait around. This makes sense. Half of Lero's life total disappears in an instant.
Yeah, he's got 14 life to work with. He's not even yet on board to what's on board.
No.
And going to go ahead and answer 1-2 with an Unholy Heat. Matthew Weiss looking very, very in a commanding spot. No answers for the Murktide would mean disaster for Derek Davis. And I think this is an attack plus Flame of Andor to take care of the Murktide Regent. Not the way you want to do it. What it might be what it takes to survive.
Yeah, it's also not enough. I need more.
Delirium. We can ice. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Ice the Ledger Shredder here. Matthew is fine with that. I can wait a turn. And I mean, still not even at a great spot. As Expressive Iteration coming down, that gives a Surveil trigger, and presumably whatever you find off the Expressive Iteration, Graveyarding, of course, another one.
Can't be broken if he's just pitching it, can it, Drake? I don't know.
I don't think that's what you need more of, if I had to guess. I think we saw an Unholy Heat among the other mix, and another Murktide Regent, sure. Yeah, everything coming up Matthew Weiss here. Finding all the good cards. Derek has seen enough. He's seen enough. The last exchange with Murktide wasn't good for him. He's out of gas. And that's going to do it for game number 1. Derek Davis previously, was up a game in the face of the Murktide deck. Now down a game in what seems to be maybe a tough matchup for him in the way his deck's configured. We talked earlier, seemed favorable. Let's take a look what he can work with now.
Deckless, and then let's get back to it. I mean, this has been a long round already. I don't want to short us a match and not be able to finish it. So you can see Derek Davis. We saw this before in this matchup. Let's go ahead and look at the opposition, see what Matthew Weiss has, how much it overlaps.
4 endurance, mystical disputes. Same cards coming in probably. So we can probably move over to Matthew Weiss, see if his sideboard looks any different. We've seen sideboarding like that before. And in the case of Matthew Weiss, he does have a Magus of the Moon. That actually might be relevant as far as coming in considerations if you care about Boseiju versus removal spells. But other than that, still, you're looking at like Flush Assurance, Engineered Explosives, and cards of that ilk. Of course, you have Chalice of the Void as well. That's actually
right. And I don't think Ryan had Chalice, so that's one extra fairly strong card. Let's go ahead and go. Game number 2, round 6.
Yeah. Straightforward sideboarding. These two decks, I mean, they prepare for each other. They're known quantities in the format. They're the 2 most popular decks in the NRG Championship. So, I mean, these players, they know what's up. They know how to sideboard, and they have sideboard cards that are, I think, pretty loudly declarative of what they're doing. Some of the cards you take out may change, but a lot of stuff that comes in, a lot of stuff should be stuff that stops the Rhinos. Anything that can keep it from being like a 3-for-1 on the Rhinos turn, great for the Murktide side. And of course, Endurance is just such a hammer against Murktide for a host of reasons, blocking flyers and answering the graveyard, the whole works. So it's very much going to be the texture, the nature of how the games play out, I think, is where you have the most interesting.
What is with these Rhinos players on the mountain? That's the basic you don't want. And we've had.
I don't know what the mountain's for. You must need red so bad. Do you have any double red cards? You don't, right? Like it's
I think so. Yeah, the Charma is double red. I use one Charma on the sideboard.
Wow. There's no way it's just for Charma. I don't know. I am not a Rhinos expert. The mountain does look pretty embarrassing the times we've seen it. Doesn't even suspend your crashing footfalls. Maybe you see a painless red source. That's the only one in your deck. Is Preordained going to resolve from Matthew Weiss off of Steam? It's again leading on Preordained. No threat, but does have 2 cantrips. As here is Mishra's Bauble. We're going to need a look at Matthew Weiss's top card. Assuming he doesn't cycle Lorraine Revealed, but we see that pulled to the front. That might be on the agenda. Chalice on 0. Game actions. And that is a heck of a game action. Derek just waiting to cycle his Island Cycler. Able to cycle Lorraine Reveal. Doesn't look like he has an answer to the Chalice, though. And if that one resolves, that's a big deal.
All right. So, yeah, cycling here. All right. We're gonna between rounds, if we ever actually have a round break, which we haven't had so far, we're gonna find out about the correct pronunciation of this blue land cycling card, which
you have now pronounced. Am I getting roasted for saying Lorraine?
I have no idea. I don't have the chat open. My point is, you have now pronounced it 2 different ways. One of them is the way I pronounce it. One of them is not. I don't know what's correct either.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not a Lord of the Rings buff like that. I assume somebody that is a Lord of the Rings buff would just be cooking me. As the Ragavan gonna get answered by Deadgon? Yeah, only one land. We another Lorraine Revealed.
Matthew Weiss did take a mulligan. I mean,
we just found one land.
One land, cantrips, Ragavan, Chalice of the Void. I mean, that seems keepable.
Maybe that's just good enough. I mean, when we talk about Derek has 4 copies of Flame of Anor, another card, another name I might be pronouncing wrong, but that one just has Shatter as a mode. I mean, Chalice might not be good enough, even though it is very impactful. It does shut down the Rhinos entirely for the moment. I mean, you need some threats and lands to back up your stuff. Matthew Weiss did find an Odawara, but maybe behind now. 2 lands to Derek's 4.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be putting pressure on, and that's not happening, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And here's Sarcast Endurance for Derek Davis. Like, shuffle that. There's no land in your graveyard. Shuffle those 4 cards back in there.
Put them back in your deck.
I guess in the meantime, bottom,
I got 3-4 beatdowns. What's up? Don't need no stinking Rhinos. We're Elementals. Surprise! Another Elementals deck. We go to Matthew Weiss.
Here we go. A game can be played. And there's a Shredder. And I guess Mishra's Bauble, they always have it, but this time it would get countered. So
yeah, that's not very good here. No. The only card really in Matthew Weiss's deck that does get countered by Chalice of the Void would actually be a really good card to have here. It does not have it. And Endurance still able to lay the smackdowns for the moment as we go back to Derek, who fetches a land tapped. Looks to be in a much better position this game, despite such a flurry of spells in turn 1 from Matthew Weiss. Here comes the smackdowns from Endurance.
So Derek Davis signing up for the race here. Matthew Weiss does have Energy Explosives in his hand, also uncastable at the moment because of his Chalice of the Void. But
no 5th land for Derek. Okay, that could give Matthew a window to catch up on mana here.
Yeah, we know if Derek had a 5th land, he would play because he's got to cast another Lorraine Revealed. He's done it like 100% of the games we've seen him so far.
He cycled 2 this game. I think he's catching up on the numbers.
Maybe he's rethought his usage of the card. All right, second
looks more effective here. Here's a second copy of Endurance and Expressive Iteration, the card you want alongside Ledger Shredder. But Matthew Weiss certainly needs some help. 2 Endurances here, looking to still be able to attack, even if Ledger Shredder does get a counter right here. 2 power and 4 toughness just means Endurance and Ledger Shredder going to block when nothing else happens. So Derek's still able to stay on the aggro plan. Oh And like, what an impactful card. We're talking about sideboards. Like, endurance just matters at every point in the game. It's like, clear the graveyard, your Murktides don't work. Okay, now I can start laying smackdowns, but if that stops happening, it doesn't matter. I still need the time in order to get my Rhinos online. Such an impactful card in the Murktide matchup. Fourth land was found for Matthew Weiss. And back over to Derek we go. Is this another cycle? Joe, he's cut all the way up. 3 cycles of Lorraine revealed.
All right, so yeah, you're right. 3 and 3 versus the usage of the card. Finds a 5th land, but yeah, Matthew Weiss now stable, which is pretty good considering how he started, how he opened.
Yeah, incredible. I did not expect that to be where we're at. And Ragavan now threatening to like punish an attack if we do still, kind of try to keep the pressure on with endurance. Ragavan, the back crack, maybe too threatening. Speaking to the well-known power of Ragavan at this point, I think in Modern's history, but a smackdown from endurance comes nonetheless.
Yeah, putting Matthew to the test here. I mean, do you block with Ledger Shredder? I mean, that's makes you vulnerable to a number of things. But 13
Even
life?
Just Violent Outburst would be a problem.
Yeah.
Violent Outburst. This is what we talk about. Violent Outburst, Fire Ice, Dead Gone, all those things. But I mean, what worlds are you winning where you're just like not blocking?
I know.
Taking 6.
Yeah,
it's not good.
Well, he's going to do it. He's going to drop to 7.
All right. Well, it looks like it might be Fire Ice after all. And that might be a very disciplined no blocks because, yeah, you want to kill the Ragavan anyway. And so that would have been a blowout. Matthew Weiss, heads up, not blocking. Really tight play there. And back to Matthew Weiss we go. All of a sudden, needs another impactful turn. This endurance beatdown kind of working. Down to 7.
It absolutely is. And Matthew, I guess if he has another land, never mind. You can't play his deck cannot play explosives on 3, which would actually be useful. Which is a rarity.
Which would you're implying the card would be so poor. I mean, it is blank right now until Chalice is off the board. It's straight blank. But because there's no 1s, there's no 2s, and you can't put it on 3. So you can't put it on 0. Can't even play it to trigger your well, you can play it to trigger your Ledger Shredder.
I mean, we can see
that's tough.
We can see a very desperate Matthew Weiss basically just throwing it in the trash in order to connive. I mean, connive is strong. Is it worth 2 for 1 of yourself in order to connive?
Is it worth throwing your sideboard card in the trash can? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, endurance is what it's about, not Rhinos, but that could easily change if this Chalice is off the board.
There's a Murktide hand. That's a good one. Although,
throw.
We are.
Then put Murktide in play for
that
1
hurts.
spell?
It's a 3/3. It's like it doesn't even have a counter.
No counters, huh?
It can't even block.
You just get 1 counter? Come on, there's none?
There's
none?
Oh, is there one?
I thought there might have been 1, an expressive iteration at some point. I know Ragavan, Bobble among the crew.
There had to be an iteration. Okay.
This Murktide's just so bad if we don't get a counter. Like, you can't even block an endurance. It's just not the spot to be. Considering discarding this preordain.
Okay, we're conniving here. That's what's happening. Yeah. Okay, so it is a 4/4. All right. Which, you're right. It had to be. There's almost no point in casting it otherwise. I mean, I guess you could set up a double block, but that's not very exciting either. So now things are different. Now Derek Davis goes from having a lethal attack to having no attack.
Maybe a little bit of a bluff here being run by Matthew Weiss. Discarded Preordain. I didn't see any 1-mana counterspells. I see 2-mana counterspell. But discarding Preordain, when you could cast it and you just went through all these measures to trigger your Ledger Shredder, by throwing your bottle in the garbage can, leaving up that 1 mana instead of tapping out, potentially representing, some 1-mana counter magic. It's Horncast! Oh, that's all 4. Let's go. Lorraine revealed 3 cards coming, able to get busy. And there is an island and just a pass of the turn. Back to Matthew Weiss. Can't be that upset with that turn. Now gets to untap with all these threats and counterspell, but can't be thrilled.
No, I wouldn't think so. And Derek Davis, the first set of cards. I mean, Chalice the Void's still there. I actually honestly didn't expect it would last this long.
There's so many answers. So many answers in the deck. Mystical Dispute going after a Ledger Shredder. That's going to get a counter spell eaten, and that's going to trigger the Ledger Shredder that's in play already. Okay. Well, now shields are down, and Derek Davis has 6 mana. So if it's Flame of Anor plus Rhinos, things could be problematic. And Derek has so much life to work with that we're not even really at racing is good territory yet.
No.
Preordain, the only card left in Matthew Weiss's hand. I mean, yeah, even attack with Murktide isn't good because you just get double blocked. It's just not where you want to be. And Violent Outburst is the card in hand. Is there an answer to the Chalice of the Void? It's what Derek needs right now. If he has it, that could be the end of this game. If not, Matthew Weiss in great spot with that Preordain dialed up next turn. looking to trigger some ledger shredders. The posture of Derek is not the posture of someone that has to just blow up Chalice and have it right away. It's going to be suspend crashing footfalls. Go. Well, that's not
never
ideal.
Good. That's even worse. That's even worse than turn 1 suspend. What is this, turn 8? Come on.
Oh yeah, right. At least, right?
Preordain into anything here would be very strong for Matthew.
Oh, how about Murktide Regent? That grows the one
that counts.
That's very good. And that's exactly what it is.
As anything,
3 spells, I believe, 2 preordains and a counter spell.
Oh,
that makes double blocking pretty bad and triggers all the ledger shredders. And this looks bad for Derek. Now, not even Rhinos may be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a tough break. All these cards seen, Lorraine revealed, resolved. I mean, it's like you said, it's been like 8 turns. We've seen like 8 cards. We drew 3 cards off Lorraine revealed. We've cycled a few times off of things like ice and stuff like that. It's just still have not found any of the Flame of Anors, any of the Besajus, even Brazen Bar or anything.
Yeah. So can we go in? Can we get in there with 1 Murktide for 7? Matthew's thinking about it.
I think you definitely attack with at least the Murktide, maybe the Ledger Shredder too. I mean, you are at a precarious life total, but I mean, Derek needs so much. You do just need to get this game over with sooner rather than later. Don't let him even have a chance to draw out of this. Yeah, and I like this attack a lot. I want to get busy with both attackers here. That is what he
12.
chooses to do.
That is 12. I would imagine Derek just takes this and then, well, I mean, running ices would win the game without a block.
All the double blocks are bad. Everything has 7 toughness. I think blocking the Ledger Shredder isn't good. I think at least it doesn't feel good. I mean, nothing feels good, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I don't see a block. I think you just...
If he has like ice or something, maybe this isn't bad.
I mean, if you kill one of these creatures, which you're not even... Okay, you're going to outburst. But even this...
I mean, yeah. Now I have to do this, and we're not even going to cast it because it just triggers the Ledger Shredder. There's no way we're casting this. So we just have to do this for the formality of it. So this is what I'm talking about. This is just like neither of these players are invested in this cascade trigger. It just takes this outsized share of the game. What are we doing here? Look at the shake of the head. I love it. All right, yeah, I'm going to choose not to cast it. I moved some cards around.
When you have the opportunity to show your opponent everything you sideboard, you might as well take it.
Sure. Yeah, so fun.
All right. What does this do for Derek? Does he? Okay, he kills the Murktide.
Yeah,
he's still in horrendous trouble, and I feel like he has fewer ways to win now.
I mean, a 7/7 Murktide is the biggest problem as far as killing you quickly. This might buy an extra turn, especially if you find something like a Brazen Borrower that can like answer Chalice and get involved in blocking. So like that's a card I think that I could call out as being like potentially good enough to swing. Because like, Matthew's at 6. Like 1 Violent Outburst Rhinos working after an attack is good enough. So even though it looks like he's so far ahead, and he is, I mean, there is opportunities for specific sequences of draw steps to get Derek out. But I mean, it needs to be right now. And Derek has 1 card in. I didn't get a look, but it needs to be good. And like I said, Brazen Borrower is kind of on the short list of cards that might be good enough.
All right. So Derek's at let's see, 12 right now, I believe. So it's going to be an attack for
6
2
plus
of the
5.
Block. Yeah. So now Derek will go up to 7. Another Shredder, and this is just too many creatures.
All right, it's Violent Outburst. There's Dead Gone. Is that too little, too late? I think it is because that still doesn't answer the Chalice, and it doesn't do anything. Yeah, shake the hand down to 1 and 5 goes Derek, and dwindling with his win rate is his I guess optimism of staying in this tournament.
All right, well, he's got 1 more round to go. If he can win it, he'll pick up $100. Maybe he can $100 additional dollars on his prize, and maybe he can make it into 5th place in his pot, 6th place in his pot. In the meantime, all right, Steven Dykman is here to talk to us. 1 player went 7-0 in their pods today, and he's sitting right here. Steven, congratulations. How's it feel?
It feels pretty good, man, but still a lot of work to do. So,
well, sure, but no more work today for you.
It's true.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Steven advances into stage 3. He will be one of the players who gets to skip day 2. What did you feel strongest about format-wise coming into the day? Which deck?
Pioneer.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, tell us why.
I mean, Rakdos midrange has just kind of been my deck for a very long time. I really like it. I think I have a good grasp on it. I prefer the midrange style decks. And I thought that I had the best read of what the metagame would look like in that format. I predicted before the event even started that I thought about 6 people might play blue-white in this event, and I thought at least 2 would be on Phoenix, which is like a very, very unique in metagame. It's not something you're going to plan for like the RC, for example. I built Rakdos much differently than I did for this event, but it turned out that I think 5 or 6 people did play blue-white, and I think at least 2 people are on Phoenix.
No, you actually nailed. You were exact on both of those, I believe.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So you play, because I looked at your deck list a couple days ago after you submitted it, and I saw that you had. I think I commented in the commentator chat that I had never seen anyone play 7 discard spells main deck in black-red in this format.
Yeah.
And that's what you chose to do.
Yep.
So really targeting, like you're saying, the slower decks, the bluer decks, and that paid off. Did you make an equivalent choice in standard or modern?
So standard was really, I just saw Mog's list from the super qualifier on Monday, and I made 1 card change in the sideboard. I cut 1 grasp for a 3rd anoint, because anoint was a card that I found that I was bringing in a lot of the mid-range mirrors. Really good card, I think, on the draw especially. And again, I didn't expect a lot of people to register the really aggressive decks in standard either. I kind of thought most people would default to either domain or mid-range, and so I thought the random anti-aggro card was a little less necessary, so I went down on one of those. And then in modern, I just went with the deck that I felt was gave me the best chance into rhinos. I played Scam last week in one of the super qualifiers and got beat very badly by rhinos a few times. And I knew at least a few people would register rhinos into this event. There are less of them than I thought there were. Other people ended up on Murktide too, but I'm fine playing Murktide mirrors. So pretty happy with all the deck selections. But I think the most interesting deck I submitted was definitely my Pioneer deck. A lot of kind of differences to what you would normally see. I'm down a 2-mana removal spell, so I only have 2 of those in the main. I only have 2 Bone Crushers in the main, but I do board a 3rd. That's pretty unheard of. You never really see people board Bone Crusher Giant. But I thought it was a really important card in Rakdos mirrors, and I did play a Rakdos mirror today, so I was really happy to have it in the board.
Yeah, kind of in the same vein, when you're talking about, your preparation, your expectations as far as opposing decks, and kind of what you feel your matchup spread is. I saw a little bit of discussion on Twitter, but I really want to take the opportunity here to talk about the swap that happened between pods and your thought process there. I mean, you mentioned a little bit on Twitter, the person you brought into your pod, you're like, I don't even win that much against them, but this is just what makes sense. Can you break that down a little bit and what that decision was and what into it?
Yeah, so I predicted that I was pretty certain that Will was going to play Rakdos in standard. We kind of my testing team kind of thought he might play the ramp deck, and then in modern, Scam was something that I thought he might do, and then what it really was, honestly, is Chris had obviously a very unique deck in Pioneer, and was definitely a deck I was a little worried about, not one I've tested a ton against, and it definitely can go over the top of Rakdos, so it could have given me trouble. Chris is obviously an excellent Yawgmoth player. He had kind of a rough day today, but I mean, really, really good Yawgmoth pilot, and Yawgmoth is typically a little favored into Murktide. Definitely not one of the easier matchups for Murktide. And then in standard, again, he had a pretty scary deck. That deck can do some pretty explosive stuff, and the blue-black deck doesn't really have a ton of removal in game 1. I think my 3rd anoint would have been really big in that matchup, but I still think it would have been kind of rough. And at the end of the day, too, I kind of just didn't want a teammate in my pod, so ended up swapping him over there. And obviously, unfortunate, he didn't do great, but Kyle's still doing quite well, so pulling for him to finish out the day strong here.
All right. Well, Stephen Dykman, congratulations. Yeah. You did great all year long. You were, I think, in the little power rankings I made up, you were, I think, number 1 and number 2 in Modern and Pioneer. And, makes my rankings look good as you are through to Sunday morning. Congratulations for that. And we will see you on the flip side.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
So, Stephen Dykman, an impressive display for sure. All right. We're going to take a break.